Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. First, today is September 11th. 16 years ago, our country came under attack and thousands of innocent and we're seeing their commitment to families of our state today as they conduct search and rescue missions to keep people safe. Today, I want to thank the U.S. Coast Guard. I want to thank Admiral Schultz for taking me on today's tour to assess damage, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We have a wonderful Coast Guard, we have a wonderful military, and I can tell you, I can't say enough about how they have shown up and they're continuing to show up to do the right thing. Our military not only defends the freedom of this country, but they show up when there's a crisis. I just received a weather briefing on Tropical Storm Irma's continued path through our state. It's been downgraded to a tropical storm and has sustained winds of 65 miles per hour. Here's what we're seeing across our state. Storm surge across South and Southwest Florida range from 4 to 8 feet. Monroe County experienced an estimated 10 feet of surge at landfall. Miami-Dade experienced approximately 4 feet of storm surge. What's interesting about the storm surge is this is totally different than Andrew. A lot of us remember Andrew, and we didn't see the storm surge in Andrew. It was more of a wind event. In Tampa, we're seeing 2 to 4 feet of storm surge right now, and this will last throughout today. We're seeing surge of 3 to 6 feet along the Big Bend. If you remember, the Big Bend and further in the Panhandle last year, and Irma got significant storm surge, and we saw a lot of damage. In Central Florida, in the Orlando area, we're seeing flooding due to a torrential rain of more than a foot. In Jacksonville and Northeast Florida, storm surge is 3 to 5 feet on top of more than a foot of rainfall, which is causing record and historical flooding along the St. Johns River. They also explained to me this morning in the weather briefing that Hurricane Jose is also pushing water into the northern part of our state, which is preventing the water from flowing out as fast. I spoke to Jacksonville Mayor Lenny Curry this morning and assured him that resources are being deployed. Fish and Wildlife Commission immediately deployed 3 search and rescue teams with 22 officers and 10 boats that were pre-staged in the region to Jacksonville. We're going to do everything we did. The way I look at it is, as governor, and all of us think this way, we want to keep everybody safe through this storm, and we want to keep everybody safe back after this storm, and we get everybody back to a normal life as quickly as possible. We've also deployed a 25-person team from the State Emergency Operations Center to the Emergency Operations Center in Putnam, Duval, and Clay counties in response to this historic flooding. We will continue to send resources to Jacksonville and any other community in need. Rainfall exceeding a foot in many communities in Northeast, Central, and Southwest Florida. Fortunately, the heaviest rain has cleared the state. However, this rain caused flash flooding in Northeast Florida. Rivers across the state continue to rise, and standing water remains an issue over the entire peninsula. The biggest threat for this week as Irma leaves Florida will be river flooding, and most of that's going to be in the northern part of the state. Stay attuned to local advisories for river flood watches and warnings. Families in Southeast and Northwest Florida, as well as the Tampa Bay area, need to be especially vigilant as local rivers could remain at flood levels into this weekend, and we generally see that in the I-4 corridor north. The heaviest winds have now left Florida, but the entire peninsula experienced at least tropical force winds with hurricane gusts being felt as far east and north as Jacksonville. Thankfully, the threat of tornadoes has diminished. We've received 7 reports of tornadoes, including 2 in Brevard County. The National Weather Service is working to confirm these reports. Given this weather report, if your family and your family have evacuated, it's extremely important that you check with local officials before return home to make sure you can safely do so. Don't go back. Don't think just because this thing passed you can run home. We've got down power lines all across the state. We've got roads that are impassable still across the state. We've got debris all over the state. Our goal again is don't put any more lives at risk. We already went through this horrendous storm. Don't put your life at risk because of down power lines, debris, impassable roads. This morning I had the opportunity to travel with the Coast Guard and Admiral Schultz to survey damage throughout the west coast of Florida and through the Keys. I want to thank the Coast Guard for this opportunity. And here's what we saw. We saw the remnants of the storm surge along the West Coast, but we didn't see I didn't see the damage I thought I would see. We clearly saw homes that were messed up. We clearly saw roofs that were off. We clearly saw boats out of the place and things like that. But I thought we would see more damage. There's still flooding. There's still sand on the roads and things like that. But on the West Coast, and this is confirmed by the mayors I've spoken to today, it's not as bad as we thought the storm surge would do. Now, when you get to the Keys, we were able to fly into the Naval Air Station in Key West, which as of just a few hours before we landed, had significant water still on it. But they worked to clear that. We went over all that area. We saw a lot of boats wash ashore. We saw basically almost every trailer park, they're overturned. I don't think I saw one trailer park that almost everything wasn't overturned. We still saw a lot of flood damage, and from talking to the officials down in the Keys, the water is not working, the sewer's not working, and there's no electricity. So it's very tough. The National Guard, this is Adjutant General Michael Calhoun, they've already gone all the way down to the Keys, and all the bridges are passable, the roads are passable. However, there's clearly some bridge damage, there's clearly road damage, but you can get down there and traffic. There's not a lot of traffic, which is good. It's moving. My heart goes out to the people in the Keys. I mean, there's devastation. And I just hope everybody survived. It's horrible what we saw. I know for our entire state, but especially for the Keys, it's going to be a long road. There's a lot of damage. I know everybody wants to get back to normal. I know everyone wants to get started, but again, you got to be patient. You got to get the first responders in the Keys. We got to get the water going again. We got to get electricity going again. We got to get the sewers going again. It's going to take a lot of time. I can tell you, everybody at the local level, the state level, and the federal level, everybody's working hard. Our brave members of local, state, and federal law enforcement, the National Guard, military members have been working around the clock to save people alive. We've got rescue teams with all sorts of equipment trying to make sure we don't lose anybody. If anybody's in harm's way, you can call your local law enforcement. You can call the state emergency hotline, which is 800-342-3775. Somebody will show up. We're working with FEMA. I can tell you the White House has been outstanding. I talked to President Trump 3 times yesterday. I talked to Administrator Brock Long with FEMA already today. I talked to him multiple times yesterday. I can tell you, I've talked to so many cabinet members. I talked to Vice President Pence yesterday. The White House and everybody at the federal level is showing up, and they are going to. My belief is they're going to show up and they're going to do everything they can. We've got, and I'll talk about a little bit the missions, the resources they're providing. DOT is working hard to clear the roads and inspect the bridges all across the state. We need DOT to inspect the bridges before people go back to these barrier islands and places like that. It's a top priority. It was a top priority after Matthew. If you don't need to be on the roads, don't get out. I mean, there's still more. Again, there's power lines, all sorts of things like that we're working on. Let me just go on down. I've never used this to do this before. The U.S. Navy, the Coast Guard, everybody's going to be providing resources. The Navy has deployed the USS Iwo Jima, the USS New York, and the carrier Abraham Lincoln to help with search and rescue and a lot of other things. Power outages. We have about 65% of the state out without power. It's going to take us a long time to get power back. I've been talking to the utilities. I'm having daily calls with the utilities to get the power back on. They're going to do everything we can. I've been talking to nursing homes all morning. I've been talking to assisted living. Everybody needs their power back on. I can tell you that they're bringing in 23,000 members. This is just what the utilities are doing, not including what the federal government's doing, not including the support of the military. Fuel. We're doing everything we can to get fuel back in the state. As you all know, we had fuel shortages last week. We had outages. We had a lot of shortages. The two big ports are Tampa and Port Everglades. Both of them have fuel in their tanks that they had to have in the tanks during the hurricane. We're getting that out through our carriers. We're giving them law enforcement escorts. We're doing the same with the utilities to get the utility trucks out as much as possible. We pre-positioned as many as we can. Some we couldn't. That ended up out of the state, and we're getting those down here as much as possible. I just tell you that everybody is going to work hard. But the way I think about it is we got to keep everybody safe. We've got to get our hospitals back open. We've got to get our fuel back here. We've got to get our roads open. We got to get everybody their electricity back. And I can't tell you anybody that's not working. My experience is everybody is working their tail off. And unfortunately, everybody's going to have to be patient because it's going to be a lot of work to get this done. This is not an insignificant storm. This impacted what's different here is it impacted our state. You could usually pre-position assets on one half of the state or the other. This one you couldn't because it was coming all the way down the state. So it was a lot of work. So I want to thank everybody, starting with the president. I want to thank everybody at the federal government. I want to thank everybody at the local government. I want to thank everybody at the state government. They have busted their rear, keeping us all safe. So now it's my distinct opportunity to introduce somebody I've enjoyed traveling with today, and I know that with his leadership, the Coast Guard is going to be an unbelievable partner in this. Admiral Schultz.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. As our acting secretary, Secretary Elaine Duke, said this morning, the Department of Homeland Security has been preparing for Irma to arrive first in the Caribbean and here in Florida for the good part of more than a week. Coast Guard has been reconstituting our forces today. We've got our first aircraft back here in Miami, in Clearwater, helicopters that arrived from sea-based cutters, and we'll be reconstituting our force in force, bringing our people back into the state. This has been a very challenging storm in the fact that it covered the entire state. And our business model essentially is we flow our resources away so we can be the first back. This storm posed some challenges there. Requests for search and rescue so far have been very, very, very low. We've had enjoyed an exceptional partnership with a very capable Florida emergency management team, with our DoD, Department of Defense, and National Guard partners, and with state and local agencies, first responders. And the Coast Guard remains committed to supporting the state of Florida and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and I'll stand by for any questions. Thank you.
As you all know, we had a significant evacuation effort in the state. Our Highway Patrol did an unbelievable job keeping the roads open, making sure evacuation roads were open. We, of course, had to add some not contra lanes, but shoulders. But our Highway Patrol did a great job. So now we have Major De La Pretra here from Highway Patrol.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Governor. We appreciate your guidance, leadership, and support throughout this entire process. It's been overwhelming. The Admiral, General, the support of the military personnel that are supporting local law enforcement, our first responders, has been nothing short of spectacular. On behalf of the Florida Patrol, we would like to urge all motorists in the South Florida area, Monroe, Miami-Dade, through Broward County, to please avoid any unnecessary travel on our roadways. Help law enforcement, our first responders, and all of our recovery personnel, the fuel tankers, the utility trucks, and everyone else that's going to be involved in this lengthy process. Please assist us by staying off the roadways unless it's absolutely necessary, and most of all, overnight to comply with the curfews that are in place. It'll greatly enhance and help us accomplishing getting everyone back to a normal way of life. Thank you.
I called up 7,000 members of our National Guard. The National Guard shows up when there's a crisis. They've been deployed over 100 times since 9/11. But in crises like this, they always show up. We're also getting National Guards from around the country. Here we have Major General Michael Calhoun.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor. First, I'd like to thank you for your leadership, sir, and being proactive in this event and getting us pre-staged. I also like to thank the Coast Guard, along with some of our other sister services, for our support today and getting us down so we can evaluate the common operating picture. The Florida National Guard is fully activated. As of now, it's roughly 8,000 guardsmen on ground participating in this event. We've got 2,000 guardsmen in over 200 shelters of the 500 shelters that we have open. We've got 900 plus guardsmen in the immediate area with another 500 coming tonight. As the governor mentioned, we did go all the way down to the Keys. There's light traffic, but we sent a small engineer asset along with them to ensure that the roads are clear of any debris. And right now it seems to be working smoothly. We'll also have search and rescue. If they're not on the ground in the Keys right now, a bended search and rescue with Fish and Wildlife, Florida National Guard, and Urban Search and Rescue. Sir, thank you very much, Penny.
The federal government is going to be a great partner, and one of the reasons is you've sent wonderful people to Congress. So now we're going to hear from Congresswoman Ileana Ross-Layton.
Thank you so much. Although we thank our first responders each and every day, today, 9/11, is a especially poignant day, and we thank the firefighters, the police officers, all law enforcement personnel who walked into what was sure to be the day of their death. And that's the kind of sacrifice law enforcement and our military officials make each and every day. So we thank all of the brave men and women standing behind us that make every day possible for us to live in safety and without fear. I want to tell the governor that when Dexter and I, we were survivors of Hurricane Andrew 25 years ago, living in the same house. And boy, when you compare the federal, state, and local response during Andrew, before, during, and after the storm, to today with Hurricane Irma, it's been a, no pun intended, a sea change in the positive way. It's been coordinated, it's been seamless. I know that constituents are frustrated with the lack of gas and the lack of electricity, but it's been a big problem. It was a huge storm. It's going to take us a while to dig out of this. But Carlos Curbelo and I are determined to go back to D.C. and work with our colleagues to find the funds needed for the hurricane relief efforts. We found it for Hurricane Harvey. We're going to band together and find it for the residents who are survivors of Hurricane Irma. Para nosotros es un placer y un honor darle las gracias a las personas que sacrifican todos los días para mantenernos seguros. Hoy es un día muy simbólico para nuestra nación, el 9/11. Le damos las gracias a esas personas que sacrificaron sus vidas para salvarnos a todos, igual que todos las mujeres y hombres que están atrás de nosotros, que sacrifican todos los días, en este caso por el huracán Irma. Curbelo y yo y toda nuestra delegación vamos a regresar a Washington en estos días para trabajar con nuestros colegas para conseguir los fondos necesarios para reemplazar FEMA y las otras organizaciones nacionales. Nosotros ayudamos a nuestros colegas en Texas y Luisiana con el huracán Harvey. Ellos nos van a ayudar también con el huracán Irma. Pero comparando la reacción del Estado, del gobierno federal y local de hoy en día con huracán Andrew, estamos en una posición mucho más positiva. So thank you, Governor Scott.
We'll be glad to answer any questions that anybody has. Say again? Oh, north of the Keys. If you get what you saw in Key West is you saw the boats damaged, you saw some houses damaged, you saw some roofs damaged. But as you go up towards Marathon, you saw any trailer park. I mean, I don't think I saw a trailer park where it seemed like everything wasn't turned over. You saw some flooding. You saw homes with without their roofs and things like that. You saw lots of boats damaged. But that's where I saw the worst damage. You could clearly see the storm surge. Now, the positive is, I thought it was going to be even worse as far as 15 foot of storm surge. So I hope you just hope everybody survived.
Any idea how much money the state this is going to cost?
No, but I'll tell you what I appreciate the president. He did a pre-landfall declaration and he did a major declaration. He did a pre-landfall right after I asked him. I think the day I asked him, and he did the major declaration the same day I asked him. The Homeland Security, FEMA, the president, the vice president, they've just been great partners. We have rescue teams going out just to make sure. The flooding in Jacksonville, we sent a lot this morning because we saw so much flooding there. So I know we have teams out there, but I don't have any personal knowledge right now if somebody's still stranded. But I know we have rescue teams out.
Governor, any fatalities that you are aware of, either in the Keys or elsewhere in the state related to Irma?
The local officials will announce any fatalities.
Are you prepared for the influx surplus of for you to evacuate to come back downstate? There's not a lot of gas in the turnpike or the other stations. What are you doing?
Step one, we got to get the roads open. Highway safety, Department of Transportation is working hard to do that, especially the evacuation routes. Number two, we've got to get the fuel back. We're working to make sure Port Tampa and Port Everglades get open so we can get the tankers in. There's tankers ready to come in. They're bringing a lot of fuel. But that will take some period of time because not only do we have to get the fuel in, then we got to get the fuel to the gas station. So that's going to take a few days to get caught up because people bought so much gas. And I'm sure driving back, they're going to buy a lot of gas again. But right now, the big risk you've got is on top of those things, you got to be careful. There's so many down power lines. You know, do you want to go to a house when you don't have any power? And then there's, just because we get the evacuation routes, we still have the local roads. And I know I've talked to mayors around the state today, and they're all working hard to get the roads clean. I've talked to sheriffs today, and they're doing the same thing. But there's a lot to prepare before people rush back to their homes.
Governor, you went almost county by county telling people to leave almost every hour. Are you satisfied with the number of people who left? So what you saw from here today, the importance of lives that were saved by the people who needed that morning.
You know, here's the test. The test, I don't want one fatality. You know, I don't want anybody to die. So I hope everybody listened to what we were talking about. We'll find out over time if people did or not. I remember, these days run together, but I remember the morning of when the hurricane was hitting, the roads were empty, and so I think people did leave their homes and get off the roads. We opened almost, I think, right at 600 shelters. People got into shelters, which is really a positive. By shutting down the schools, I shut down all the schools Friday through Monday. It allowed us to open up more shelters faster. Now, it made it a little harder when the storm moved to the west because we had to react very quick to do that. But the local communities did that. American Red Cross came down. Thousands of people volunteered. Nurses showed up to help take care of our special needs patients. But let me tell you, there's a lot of work to do. I've had phone calls all day long about nursing homes and assisted living that don't have their power, and so we've got to work hard to get them their power back. I know I've talked to the utilities today. They're doing it based on the biggest needs first. So there's still a lot of work to do. The keys, not having water right now, not having sewer, not having electricity. I mean, how can you live there?
What are the medical issues you're concerned with right now, especially as people try to recover and get back in?
Don't get hurt, first off. I mean, don't do foolish things that you're going to get hurt. We have some hospitals that evacuated. I went through Andrew, and I had hospitals. I had a hospital completely demolished with Andrew. We'd evacuate hospitals, so they have employees that are not back to work yet, so our hospitals are not fully staffed. So our emergency rooms are not going to be fully staffed. So you've got to be really cautious of what you're doing. But I know we did daily calls with our hospitals, with our nursing homes. Everybody that evacuated, we tried to work with them to make sure they got plans together how to get started again. Because I remember after Andrew, it's very difficult to restaff a hospital because you have employees without homes. Back then, I think I had over 500 employees without homes. And how do you get them back to work when they don't even have their own house? So it's going to take a while for our healthcare community to get back to work.
Governor, is the flooding unprecedented from Jacksonville all the way down to the peninsula and around the corner in the southwest?
I haven't seen all of it, but I know Jacksonville is historic flooding that right now. It's going to take a long time for that flooding to get out. If you look at places where and I haven't seen the flooding, but Pasco County, the flooding, and some of the flooding comes in a day later, right? There is a positive that happened. Remember, we were worried about the water spilling over the dike where they're doing the repairs, where we evacuated all the communities down there. The initial assessment is more positive than that. They didn't get the wind they thought. So, but that was just the early assessment. I'll get a briefing this afternoon, but hopefully that means we got less flooding there. Now, their issue, I'm sure, is going to be like all of us, is that you don't have power. So, but we evacuated a lot of communities around the dike, so it's going to continue to be important to get that dike fixed.
Governor, do you have any estimate for how much this hurricane will cost the state of Florida in fall? How did you get it?
Now, we don't have any estimate of what's going to cost. The way it works is we do it by county, and then it rolls up through. We do it by county, and then it rolls up through. You'll start with their emergency management teams, and they'll come, and we'll have assessment teams that go out and help them. FEMA will be part of that, and we'll all work together to come up with a number.
So today, some of the residents were trying to figure out others, possibly whipping them up, stirring them up in alarm as this storm was coming. This is folks down South Day saying, hey, it wasn't a catastrophe, and we're hearing on TV there was going to be total obliteration. Can you just address that? I mean, how do you frame the message in advance of the storm, knowing it can be really bad, but also it may not be a disaster?
Okay. Well, I think you have to listen to your local officials. You have to listen to the National Hurricane Service, what they're saying. They're doing everything they can to tell us exactly what they believe is going to happen. Our local officials are deciding what they're going to do based on trying to keep everybody safe. From my standpoint, if we saved one life, it was all worth it. I mean, every life's important.
Thank you very much, Governor, for your leadership. I have the privilege of representing the Florida Keys in the U.S. House of Representatives, and I want to bring Senator Flores, who represents the Florida Keys in the state Senate, and ask her to stand with me. The Florida Keys is going to need a lot of help, and we're blessed to have a wonderful governor and a very effective administrator at FEMA who is well aware of what the situation on the ground is starting to look like. Obviously, the president, the vice president have also been on top of this, and for that, we're very grateful. But we keep getting this question about how much this is going to cost, and we don't have an exact estimate, but I can guarantee you this. It's going to cost billions upon billions upon billions of dollars to help the Florida Keys, Florida's southwest coast, and obviously some of our residents here in Miami-Dade and Broward counties to recover. And Administrator Long, who again is doing a wonderful job, just told me a few minutes ago that they have enough funding to get them through September. And what I would tell all of my colleagues, and I know Congresswoman Ross Slayton joins me in this, is we cannot fund an agency like FEMA month to month. FEMA needs solid long-term funding so that they can effectively respond to this crisis, to the crisis in Texas, and to future crises that we can expect, given that we're still in the middle of hurricane season. So one of my big goals, and I will let Speaker Ryan know when I talk to him later today, one of my big goals is by the end of the year to have a robust funding package for FEMA so that they don't have to operate with this uncertainty and so that they can help our residents get off the ground. This is going to be very difficult. I'm frightened for what we're going to see a little later today in the Florida Keys. And I think the federal government needs to step up, support Governor Scott, and support all of our local heroes, some of them behind us here, who are going to be working day and night to help the Florida Keys, Key West, Marathon, Cudjoe Key, Summerlin Key, all of the communities that were ravaged by this storm, including our friends on the west coast of the state of Florida. So that's my message to my colleagues, and we will get right to work on it on Wednesday when we get back to Washington. Robust, long-term funding for FEMA.
Thank you. The only thing that I'd add, specifically to the question of the cost, I think from the state perspective, we know that particularly in the Florida Keys, the overwhelming majority of the residents are insured by Citizens Insurance Company. Citizens Insurance is backed by the state of Florida. What we've heard very initially is that Citizens is still, of course, trying to figure out how much this will cost as far as the people that will have to make, that will be making claims. What we have to ensure is that Citizens has the funding necessary to be able to pay those claims. I think what people need to have more than anything at this moment is patience to make sure that the Citizens adjusters will have the time to go out there directly. We feel that that because this storm was not as bad as it could have been, that Citizens will not have to go into actual assessment mode, into assessing people who are not Citizens property holders, so that it's something that it could be paid for within the reserves that they have right now. Citizens Reserves is approximately $9 billion. And so the question that we have to figure out in the next couple of days is, of that, how many of Citizens policyholders, specifically in the Keys, were essentially at a total loss that will have to that money will have to come from them. So early on, we know that this it could have been a lot worse, but we are all working together to make sure that the response is done swiftly. And in the aftermath, as people are looking to rebuild their homes, that they have patience with officials as they go in and trying to assess the damage so that we can make sure that those claims are paid in a timely manner. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for any of us? All right, thanks everybody.